And I wish to express my anger and my condemnation at the non-responsiveness and unaccountability of the Ruto regime and their collaborators in ODM and other collaborators that have come along to fortify the brutal regime. Having said that, there are a lot of statements and questions that have been raised that I would want to address. Hillary, when you get a time, I can see NATO in the body of the team. Probably you could pull him up. The first thing, and I think this one is been glossed over consistently by Kenyans, and I want to nail it in all the time because I think it is important to ground the discussion on what the fundamental problem is. The fundamental problem is the state. The country Kenya was an arbitrary boundary and state carved out by the colonial imperial powers in Berlin in 1884-1885 at the Berlin Conference. It was not organically created by Africans. So we have an alien state that was carved out arbitrarily for purposes of extracting our raw materials and exploiting our labor. It was not done, the mechanisms of extraction of our raw materials and labor was oppressive. It was not pro us. It was not done for us. It was not done humanely. Now, after the so-called flag independence in 1963, the mascots that were conscripted to continue running this colonial edifice called Kenya were supposed to continue the project of extraction, the project of oppression, the project of exploitation. So we must anchor our discussion on that. This is the struggle we've been involved in. Unfortunately, the struggle has only related and mutated into years of painting. We've had so-called reforms. These are like applying deodorant on a skunk. We've not dealt with the foundations of the state that was not meant to serve us. We've been running around this edifice in circles of protests without addressing the problem. So when the state props up one of the mascots, the black mascots, whether it was Kenyatta, whether it was Moi, whether it was Kibaki, whether it was Uhuru Kenyatta, and now Ruto, the mascot obeys the orders of the imperial powers, not our needs, not our cries, not our demands, because that's the people that put him in power. So the loyalty is outside, first and foremost. We have to understand that. Ruto cares more about what Washington or Paris or London or, Berlin says more than they care about what we say in our villages and towns. They don't care. If one white person was murdered by the police on June 25th, whether a journalist, even a homeless white person, if one white person, even a Kenyan white, if one white person, even a homeless white person, was killed on the streets on June 25th, I can assure you that Washington would have immediately passed a resolution to get Ruto out. That's how much they care about white lives as opposed to black lives. The US Embassy, all the Western embassies would have passed and issued travel bans on this regime immediately. That's what they have done consistently. When Leakey was assaulted in Nairobi by Moi, the whole Western Hemisphere came down on Moi like a ton of bricks. And immediately thereafter, Moi formed a cabinet and appointed people that they called the Dream Team of Leakeys and the rest, and engaged in constitutional reforms that led to the repeal of Section 2A. So the point is, our lives don't matter until we make it matter by addressing this alien colonial state. That is why the revolution has to overhaul the state, reconstruct it, transform it, and have a state with the laws and constitution and morals, values that respect and value us, that give us dignity as Africans. So that's point number one. This point should never be lost, because a lot of people that have been commenting on what is happening are addressing reforms, the same deodorant on the skunk that will again put us in 100 years of us going around this edifice, dancing like primitive Africans, the way the white people intended it to be. So let's address the problem once and for all. Then we will have justice for all the people that have been victimized since independence, starting with Pio Pinto Gama in 1964 by Jomo Kenyatta, all the way to Rex and the identified bodies that are still at the morgue, and the ones that I said were incinerated by this criminal regime. That's my point number one. I want to emphasize it. Now, point number two, our country has been taken hostage by these mascots. These colonial mascots have instituted criminal systems where they belong to secret societies. That is how come they pop up with names like Joho, a man not qualified even to run my garden. A man that unqualified. And when I say that, it's not just because of grade D minus, which is also important. Because we can't have an education system that is based on competition, that is based on national exams, which are competitive, that are based on eulogizing those who get A's, then we employ the ones who have failed. You can't explain that to a child going to school. You can't explain that to the universities that are churning out graduates every day. You can't explain that to anyone who is interested in knowledge, in learning, in experience, in innovation. You can't explain that. This man, Joe Ho, does not just represent D minus. He represents a very critical, important point. He has no capacity to conceptualize public policy. Now, if you cannot conceptualize public policy, meaning you can't come up with ideas to address the critical, intractable problems of a country, then you can't deliver. You don't have the software with which to deliver good governance, development, prosperity, job creation, supply of services to the people or delivery of services to the people, so that we can see a lifestyle that is progressing from where we were a few years ago or decades ago to where the world is going, the information age. Because if these are mascots that are not going to serve us, because it is by design from the colonial government, and then these mascots are serving a secret system designed to hijack and keep hostage the state, then it doesn't matter who they appoint. It doesn't matter how qualified these people are. Because at the end of it, these people, as I said, cannot conceptualize public policy for purposes of delivering services. And they also don't have integrity, which is the software without which a human being is just a wild animal. If you do not have integrity, you will never be able to deliver good governance and services to the people. What is happening in the National Assembly? A National Assembly that lacked and was denied its legitimacy by the Gen Zs on June 25th, scrutinizing information about the person and the person's character and the person's record, the person's history, the person's contributions or lack thereof, for purposes of determining suitability for a particular office. Is that happening? Nobody is scrutinizing anything. Somebody just comes and says, I go D-. Nobody is even asking, can we see it? Somebody is saying, I have 2 degrees. Can we see the degrees? Which universities? When did you attend? Do you have any classmates? Is this degree even legitimate? Somebody is saying, oh, I have 10 companies. This is their net worth. They don't ask for the tax returns. They don't scrutinize the tax returns. They don't scrutinize assets reports, or they don't even ask for the assets reports. There are no audited reports of this person's corporate performance, or even their own tax reports. How much did they pay for taxes last year, for example? If you're saying you're worth 2.5 billion, how many hundreds of millions did you pay in tax? They don't ask that. And if you didn't pay tax, if you didn't pay tax hundreds of millions, then how do we know you are actually worth this? All I know, they are actually worth much more. Because if you go through the auditor's report, the Auditor General, they should have started there. Joe was indicted every single year for the 10 years that he was governor, for example. Oparanya was indicted every single year for the 10 years he was governor in Kakamega, for example. And it was found that they stole all the money and left zero for development in their respective counties. Joe, and I can say this to his face, is a known bad drug dealer that should never occupy any public office and should be in jail for life anywhere in the world. They don't ask these questions, which then leads me to the next issue. And I'm sorry, I am taking a little bit of time. The next issue is this. If the system is rigged, the system is by design not meant to serve us. And we have seen how these people have come together quickly to undermine what the Gen Zs tried to do on June 25th and thereabouts and after that. Why do you keep talking? Because what we should have been doing is being on the street every single day until they fall. And they would fall very quickly. Because it has happened. It has happened throughout history. It happened in Burkina Faso more recently when Compaore was chased out of town. It happened in the Philippines recently. It happened in Sri Lanka very recently. It happened in Ukraine very recently. It has happened in all over the world. It happened in Zimbabwe very recently when Mugabe was chased out after being in power for over 30 years. It happened in Sudan. Let them not sell us fear that when it happens, oh, the military will take over, oh, this guy will take over. They are worse than the military, for all that I know. Any country that keeps 75% of its most brilliant, the youngest, the most educated, the most innovative and creative, the ones with most energy that can produce, unemployed, and are saying the only thing they can do is get a handful of driving or maids, gardening kind of jobs in Saudi Arabia, are criminals that should not be able to speak. I would have been very happy If we were chasing them around and chasing them away from churches and every place that they go, like we were doing around June 25th. Because if we did that and continue doing that, even without coming to Nairobi, if Ruto today was chased out of Narok or wherever place he went, if yesterday Sudi was chased around in town and everywhere he went, these people will pay attention and Ruto will go tomorrow. So I think we have to up our game. And we have to up our game by being angry. Because nobody is going to tell you that you're going to cause chaos when we have chaos already. 75% of people being unemployed, that's worse than chaos. That's criminal chaos. When they are telling you that, oh, these people are inciting you, yes, you need to be incited. You need to be agitated. Because honestly, what are we waiting for? They're telling you, oh, Miguna is not Gen Z, so you should not be speaking. I'm a citizen. I'm a human being. I'm seeing the injustice. It doesn't have to affect me the same way it affects the unemployed for me to be angry. I have Gen Z children. My children will have children. And regardless, a human being must be able to feel for the less able around him or her. That is what civilization is all about. So if I only care about myself and do not care about others because of my station in life, then I'm an animal. Then there is no difference between me and them. Then I should not be criticizing them. Then I should not be talking about injustice. Then I should not be saying I want social justice. Then I should not be saying, oh, I've been fighting throughout my life for what is good for the country. So the challenge is on us. We have to stop asking silly questions. Silly questions about, oh, are you going to be there? Blah, blah, as if you are taking some kind of roll call for who is showing up. We don't care. We want everybody to show up. We are not taking roll call. It is a responsibility we have. And we have to remember that inspiration for good things happen regardless of time, regardless of place, regardless of location. After all, many of you consider yourselves Christian. Have you met Jesus Christ? Were you with him? But you are inspired because of what you've read about what his life looked like. And you know that he fought for something he never enjoyed because at the end of the day, he was hanged. Just the same way I think if they met me today, they would want to hang me. I don't care. I don't vibe fear. They have done worse to me that they would ever do to a lot of you guys. But I've not stopped. Because the easiest thing to do is what Joe, Oparanya, and the rest are doing. Go, kneel down, bow, be loyal, don't say anything, and just focus on looting. You will be a good boy and a girl. All they require, the level of intelligence these people require for you to become a billionaire, is just to stop complaining and be a loyal boy and girl. And they will give you billions. And as long as you don't care about what is happening to your fellow citizens, you will continue to be rich and you'll be a member of the club. Now, that is what they call intelligence. I call that barbarism. I call that primitivity. I call that a system that we must change now, not tomorrow. So, I will come back, but probably before I do, I want to give you some figures. Because we have to ground this debate on concrete evidence. Let's compare Kenya to Namibia. Namibia is a semi or completely arid African state in Southern Africa. Namibia got its independence from brutal German, Dutch, and South African colonialism in 1990. 1990. By that time, Kenya had been independent for a very long time. Kenya got her flag independence in 1963. Namibia is only 2.567 million people. Kenya, by today, is about 56 million people. But, notwithstanding the long history of armed struggle, notwithstanding the fact that Namibia is completely arid, notwithstanding the fact that Namibia only got her independence in 1990. The GDP per capita income of Namibia now in 2024, August, is $5,003 USD. $5,003 USD per month. Per capita. What is the per capita GDP per capita income in Kenya? 4,975. Which means Namibia, a completely arid country that just got their independence the other day, has more GDP per capita than Kenya. In Namibia, the healthcare system is provided universally to everyone. 83% of Namibians are catered for 100% by the government, and only 17% private. In Kenya, there is no universal health care. In Namibia today, the public debt is only 153,825 Namibian dollars, which is less than that in US dollars. In Kenya, the public debt is 31.19 billion US and about 4 trillion Kenya shillings. That's even an understatement. The corruption index in Namibia, as of today, according to Transparency International, Namibia is number 59 out of 180. Kenya, this year, is number 126 out of 180, which means that there is corruption in Namibia. But Namibia is much better than Kenya, more than 100%. Now, so these are the figures, which means that all you need, nobody needs, I was not going to give you the examples of the US or Canada or Norway or Sweden or Switzerland or France or the UK, because you will tell me those are not African countries. And I was not going to give you the example of Somalia, because we will say there is civil war in Somalia. I'm not giving you the example of the most developed country in Africa, because you will say, oh, we will get there. I'm giving you one of the youngest countries in Africa with less resources than Kenya, that does not have arable land like Kenya, does not have the weather that Kenya has, does not have our history, and still doing much better than us. This is the challenge.
Ya, huyo amekuwa ni Miguna akizungumzia tu yale ambayo yanakumba wananchi wa Kenya na kuwapea mfano tofauti, mfano mbalimbali na kuwakemea viongozi ambao wanachukua advantage ya wananchi wa Kenya, na ameweza kuzungumzia tu mambo mengi kama ulivyosikiza kwenye hiyo audio ambayo umetoka kuyasikiza sasa hivi. So sijui una maoni gani kuhusiana na aliyoichosema Miguna kwenye hiyo audio? Kama uko na maoni niachie hapo kwenye comment section. Nashukuru sana kwa wakati wako, nashukuru kwa kutazama Ruto'S TV. Kama hujasubscribe na kuomba uweze kusubscribe, au sio mtu wangu? Yani kama kawaida mimi nakwambia asante sana, yani nakushukuru sana tena sana. Kama unaitazama mchana, mimi nakutakia mchana mwema. Kama unaitazama usiku mwanana, au sio? So subscribe mtu wangu kama hujasubscribe kwenye Ruto'S TV. Hadi wakati mwingine, mimi nakutakia mchana ama usiku mwema. Kuwa na siku njema. Asante sana.